Rikki-tikki-tavi, a truly brave mongoose.
Created by Starfall.
This is the story of Rikki-tikki-tavi, a truly brave mongoose. A mongoose is a bit like a cat and a bit like a weasel. They like to snoop around. The mongoose family motto is, "Run and find out." A mongoose can move with super speed. They are known for hunting and eating snakes. If you lived in the jungles of India, there would be no better pet than a mongoose. This story will explain why this is so. When Rikki-tikki-tavi was still a young mongoose, he was carried away by a flood. The water took him from his mother and father. He nearly drowned. A little boy named Teddy found Rikki-tikki-tavi lying on the garden path. Teddy thought the mongoose was dead. Teddy's father carried the wet mongoose into their bungalow. Father dried Rikki-tikki-tavi with a warm towel. The mongoose opened his eyes, blinked once or twice, and then sneezed. Father set Rikki-tikki-tavi on the ground. Father said, "Don't frighten him. Step back. Let's see what he does." Rikki-tikki-tavi sat up and put his fur in order. Then he climbed up onto Teddy's head. Many animals lived in the garden around the bungalow. Most of the animals were kind, but some were not. Two cruel cobra snakes named Nag and Nagina ruled the garden. All the other animals were afraid of them. Nag and Nagina were angry Rikki-tikki-tavi had come to the bungalow. They knew that a mongoose could kill a cobra. Nagina came up with a wicked plan. She hissed to Nag, "You slither into the bungalow and bite the father. The family will go away and take the mongoose with them." A bird overheard the cobra's voices. She spread the news all over the garden, but Rikki-tikki-tavi did not hear of it. Rikki-tikki-tavi usually slept under Teddy's chin, but tonight he was restless. He wanted to snoop around. He quietly opened the door to Teddy's room. "Squeak!" cried a muskrat. "Please don't hurt me." "Why would I hurt you?" asked Rikki-tikki-tavi. "You won't hurt me, but rumor is I might get hurt by being with you," answered the muskrat. Rikki-tikki-tavi was surprised. "What is this rumor? And tell me the truth," he said. "Nag and Nagina, the cobras, want you to leave the garden," answered the muskrat. The muskrat told Rikki-tikki-tavi about the cobra's plan to bite Teddy's father. Rikki-tikki-tavi's eyes glowed red. He loved his new family. It was his duty to protect them. He would not let anything harm them. Just then, Rikki-tikki-tavi heard hissing voices coming from the bathroom. Rikki saw Nag slide silently in through a crack in the wall. He watched Nag's shadow coil behind a water jug. Nagina did not follow. Nag said to himself, "I will hide here in the bathroom. When the father comes in, I will bite him." Rikki Tikki Tavi would have to move fast. He quietly climbed on top of a water jug, and then... Rikki Tikki Tavi flew from the jug and grabbed onto the back of Nag's head with his teeth. The giant cobra thrashed about. Rikki Tikki Tavi held on with all his might. The family heard the thrashing and woke up. They ran to the bathroom. Both the cobra and Rikki Tikki Tavi lay still. Teddy cried out, "Oh, Rikki Tikki Tavi, are you all right?" Rikki Tikki Tavi slowly raised his head. He was alive. Nag the cobra was no more. Father saw Rikki Tikki Tavi had saved the family. Father said, "Thank you. You are truly a brave mongoose." Rikki Tikki Tavi did many other great deeds. You can read about them in The Jungle Book by Rudyard Kipling.
The end.
The Seed.
Created by Starfall.
Long ago, in a far-off land, there lived a wise gnome king. The gnome king was old. He knew it was time to retire. He thought of the future. Who would rule his kingdom when he was gone? He made a plan. The gnome king put on his best clothes. He climbed onto his elephant. He rode through his kingdom, calling out, "Come, gnome children, I have a great task for you." The children gathered around the gnome king. He said, "I can no longer rule the kingdom myself. I need a young gnome to help me. That gnome will be our future ruler." The gnome king raised a small knapsack above his head. He pulled a knife from his belt. He cut the knot, holding the knapsack closed. The knapsack opened. Seeds of many colors, shapes, and sizes spilled onto the ground. The children did not understand. The king explained, "This is your task. Please, each of you, choose a single seed. Take it home, plant it, care for it, do your best. In 1 year, I will judge your work and find the future ruler of our kingdom." Each child chose a seed and hurried home. Ralph was one of these children. He ran to tell his mother the news. Ralph held up his seed. He explained, "This is the seed I've chosen. I have to look after it myself. I will do my very best." Mother pulled a lovely pot from a shelf. She said, "You have been given a great task. You should use our best pot." Ralph read every book written about plants. Ralph filled his pot with soil. He pressed his thumb into the soil to make a hole. He gently tucked the seed inside and covered it. Ralph watered his seed. He gave it food and sunlight. He cared for it every day. He did his best. A week went by. Some of the children began talking about their seed sprouts. Ralph wrinkled his nose. His little seed hadn't sprouted at all. What am I doing wrong? Ralph asked himself. I water my seed. I give it food and sunlight. I care for it every day. The problem gnawed at his mind. Still, Ralph did not give up. He cared for his seed. He did his best. Weeks turned into months. The other children talked about their plants. Some had large plants, some had small plants. Ralph didn't say anything. He went home and checked his pot. The only thing growing was a knot in his tummy. Still, Ralph did not give up. He cared for his seed. He did his best. The year ended. It was time for the children to bring their plants before the Gnome King. His pot was as empty as the first day. Ralph waited for all the children to go inside. He said to his mother, I will stay out here. I don't have anything to show but this empty pot. Ralph's mother knew better. She said, Ralph, I know you did your best. Take your empty pot to the king. Tell the truth. Tell him what happened. The room was filled with plants of every color, shape, and size. The Gnome King greeted the children. He admired their plants. Ralph felt small. He knelt down. He wrapped his arms around his empty pot. The Gnome King saw Ralph. He hurried over to him. He asked, What kind of plant have we here? Ralph wrinkled his nose. He answered, Sir, I watered my seed. I gave it food and sunlight. I cared for it every day. I did my best, but all I have to show is an empty pot. The Gnome King turned and spoke to the children. 1 year ago, I gave each of you a single seed. Every one of those seeds had been boiled. Not one could grow. Every plant in this room but one is a phony. The Gnome King kneeled before Ralph and asked, What is your name, child? This was not what Ralph had expected. Ralph, he answered. The Gnome King went on. Only a brave and truthful child would bring an empty pot. Ralph, will you help me rule the Gnome Kingdom? Ralph smiled and answered, Yes!
The end.
Young Ernest, world-class lizard sitter.
Created by Starfall.
This is young Ernest. He is a world-class lizard sitter. All the lizard mothers and fathers in his home desert call him to look after their hatchlings. Why is Ernest their favorite sitter? Ernest has earned their trust. Ernest didn't start out as a lizard sitter. He had a dream and then made a plan. Ernest thought to himself, I want to work and earn some money. I like little lizards. I will learn to lizard sit. Ernest hung signs on every rock and cactus he could find. He waited by the phone for his first phone call. Hello, Ernest, said Mrs. Edgar. I heard that you are looking for work as a lizard sitter. Will you look after my clutch while I wash clothes? I pay $1 an egg. Yes, Mrs. Edgar, answered Ernest, but I must tell you, this is my first job. Do you still want me to lizard sit? Thank you for being truthful, said Mrs. Edgar. I'm not worried. The calendar says my eggs will not hatch until Thursday. Please be here at 4 o'clock. Ernest arrived early. Mrs. Edgar greeted him warmly. Here is my clutch. 7 pretty pearls. Just leave them as they are. Read these books to them if you like. There are caterpillars in the fridge if you get hungry. I'll be back at 5 o'clock. And like that, she was gone. Ernest's first lizard-sitting job was underway. Ernest sat beside the clutch. He said, Hello, little eggs. I have books to read to you. He read the first book. He read the second book. He read the third, fourth, and fifth book. He put a lot of effort into his reading. The eggs just sat there. Ernest worried. Was he boring? He didn't know that it is normal for eggs to sit still. He had a lot to learn about lizard sitting. He went to the fridge to snack on a few caterpillars. All at once a light went on in his head. I've got it! I can tell them the great jokes I know. Ernest stood before the clutch. He said in his actor's voice, Get ready, get set for the best jokes you have ever heard. He told them all, long ones and short ones. He even told knock-knock jokes, which is pretty hard for one lizard to do. Still, the eggs just sat there. Ernest frowned. They must not understand my humor. Ernest put his head in his hands. What could he do? What should he try? A new thought came into his mind. Maybe if I tickle him. He reached his little claw down to one of the eggs, and something horrible happened. Followed, then a third and a fourth. All 7 eggs burst open at once. Now 7 hatchlings sat in the nest where the eggs had been. Ernest could not believe his eyes. Mrs. Edgar's words played in his mind. Just leave them as they are. Just leave them as they are. Just leave them as they are. Ernest looked at the clock. 5 o'clock! Ernest looked at the door. Mrs. Edgar walked in. Oh my! Cried Mrs. Edgar. Ernest took a deep breath. Mrs. Edgar, You told me to leave the eggs as they were. I tickled one, and this happened. Mrs. Eggers smiled and shook her head. Oh, Ernest, I'm not angry. The calendar was wrong, or maybe they hatched early. Here's $10, one for each egg, and $3 more for your good work. Can you come back next week at the same time? The story of Ernest's first lizard-sitting job spread through his home desert. Now, when lizards need a sitter, they always call Ernest first. And that is how Ernest, the world-class lizard sitter, got his start.
The end. Cinderella, created by Starfall. Cinderella, created by Starfall. Cinderella lived with her mother and father in a kingdom far away. Her parents were good people who owned a beautiful home on a large estate. They were wealthy compared with most. Cinderella, like all children her age, loved to laugh and play. She never ever thought about sad or scary things. Everything changed for Cinderella when, on a cold February morning, her mother died. Everything changed for Cinderella when, on a cold February morning, her mother died. Cinderella's father could not bear to see his child without her mother. He quickly married a woman who had 2 daughters of her own, Mary and Clarice. Cinderella was wary of her stepmother and stepsisters. She did not trust them. Not long after, Cinderella's father also died. This was the end of Cinderella's happy days. Cinderella was wise to be wary. Her stepmother and sisters were greedy and cruel. They made her a servant in her own home. Cinderella did all of the cooking and cleaning. They gave her only rags to wear. Even in her rags, Cinderella was more lovely than Mary and Clarice. The stepsisters knew this and were unfair to her because of it. Cinderella missed her parents and thought of them every day. She was often sad, but still did her chores with a smile. She dreamed of a better life. What else could she do? Cinderella answered a knock at the door. A short, hairy man handed her a letter and said, "From the prince, miss." He bowed and went on his way. Cinderella carried the letter to her stepsisters. Clarice grabbed it greedily and said, "Give it here!" Mary grabbed it from Clarice and said, "Give it to me, you'll tear it!" Stepmother grabbed it from Mary. She read the letter and exclaimed, "The prince is having a ball tonight. Every girl in the whole kingdom must attend." "Perhaps that means I can go too," said Cinderella. Clarice and Mary began to laugh. Stepmother hushed them. "Yes, Cinderella, you may go to the ball." The sisters gasped. Cinderella was wary. Stepmother said, "Perhaps you may attend the ball if you finish all of your chores and if you find something to wear." Mary and Clarice kept Cinderella working the whole day. She had little time to do her own chores. By the time the coach arrived, Cinderella was still in rags. Cinderella opened the coach door to help her stepmother and stepsisters inside. Stepmother asked with a cruel laugh, "Cinderella, why aren't you ready to go?" Cinderella said not a word. She bowed, closed the coach door, and watched as it rolled out of sight. Cinderella sat at the foot of the stairs. She began to cry. "Oh, how I wish I could go to the ball." Suddenly, something magical happened. A light appeared on the stairs above her. Cinderella looked up and saw a woman unlike any she had seen before. The woman was so bright, Cinderella could barely keep her eyes open. The woman said, "Hello, Cinderella. I am your fairy godmother. It's time to get ready for the ball." Before Cinderella could say a word, her rags had become a shimmering gown. On each tiny foot glittered a beautiful glass slipper. The fairy godmother changed a pumpkin into a coach and 4 mice into horses. She helped Cinderella into the coach. When Cinderella tried to thank her, the fairy godmother placed a finger on Cinderella's lips. "Remember this, my dear child. Be home before midnight, for at that time the spell will be ended. Everything will be as it was." Cinderella had never been to a ball before. She knew only work and rags. She walked around the ballroom. She filled her eyes with all the beautiful sights. The prince saw Cinderella walking alone. He asked the king and queen, his parents, "Who is that lovely young woman?" The prince didn't wait for an answer. He walked up to Cinderella and asked her to dance. Cinderella did not know that he was the prince. They danced and danced until she heard the first strike of midnight. "Oh, did you hear that bell?" said Cinderella. "I must keep my word and leave at once." Cinderella turned from the prince. He could not believe his eyes. She ran out of the ballroom and down the stairs to her carriage. She lost one of her slippers along the way, but did not stop to pick it up. The prince ran after her. By the time he reached the stairs, she was gone. All she had left behind was one glass slipper. The prince exclaimed, "I must find the young woman who fits this slipper. When I do, I will marry her." The prince searched for the young woman in every home in the kingdom. At last he came to Cinderella's family estate. Mary and Clarice didn't tell Cinderella that the prince was there. After all, she hadn't been to the ball. Why would she need to know? Each sister in turn greedily tried on the slipper. It was too narrow for their feet. Cinderella walked into the room wearing her rags. She found herself face to face with the prince. The prince knew Cinderella at once, even dressed in rags. He knelt before her and asked, "Miss, perhaps you will fit this slipper." Cinderella's stepmother stood between Cinderella and the prince. "No, no, sir. This girl is but a servant. She could not have been at your ball." But the prince would not be fooled. Cinderella sat down, and the prince placed the slipper on her foot. It fit perfectly. Cinderella pulled the other slipper from her pocket and put it on. Suddenly, her rags changed back into her shimmering gown. The prince's search had come to an end. Cinderella was the young woman he was looking for.
The end.
Dingo, Dingo.
Created by Starfall.
This is the story of a very naughty boy who lived on the island nation of Australia. His family owned a sheep station just outside of a small town. The people of the town were very proud of the sheep on the station. It was their opinion that the flock was the best for 1,000,000 miles around. The sheep's big fluffy coats, called fleece, were bought and sold all around the world. The boy kept watch over the sheep. It was his job to protect the flock from wild dogs, called dingoes. It was lonely work and he was often bored. I'm sorry to mention it, but this boy would do anything for attention. The sheep wandered and grazed on the hills above the town. Most of the time, they were near enough to the town for the boy to see and hear the townspeople. The sheep wandered and grazed on the hills above the town. Most of the time, they were near enough to the town for the boy to see and hear the townspeople. The boy thought to himself, "I'm so bored watching these sheep. Every day goes by the same as the last. I need some action." The boy did a very naughty thing. He cried out loud and clear, "Dingo! Dingo! A dingo is after the sheep!" He waited at the top of the hill for a reaction from the town. The townspeople's reaction was better than he expected. Mothers and fathers, sons and daughters all ran up the hill to save the sheep. Red-faced and panting, they asked, "Where is it? Where's the dingo?" The boy answered them with a laugh. "There was no dingo. I was only joking." The townspeople were angry. "What a naughty boy you are! We thought your parents taught you better than that." They turned and walked back in the direction of the town. An old woman stayed behind to caution the boy. She sat down beside him and said, "You must be lonely up Sheep do not make the best companions. The boy only wrinkled his nose and tried to ignore her. Ignore me if you want, but I thought I ought to warn you, she said her next words with passion. No one believes a liar, even when he tells the truth. Several weeks passed before the sheep returned to graze near the town. As night fell, the boy could see cozy fires glowing in the houses below. He thought, I bet the townspeople would fall for my prank a second time. I'm sorry to say the boy did not remember the old woman's words of caution. He put his hand to his mouth and cried out into the night, Dingo! Dingo! A dingo was after the sheep! A great commotion rose up from the town. The boy knew the townspeople would soon be up on the hill. He thought he was clever and laughed to himself. I can't wait to see their silly pajamas. Sure enough, mothers and fathers, sons and daughters, all came running up the hill barefoot and in their pajamas. They waved their torches right and left. Where's the dingo? There is no dingo, answered the boy. You sure are easy to trick. You fell for my joke a second time. Perhaps you have heard of the word emotion. Emotion is another word for feeling. Now, usually, when you hear a funny joke, you feel joy. This was not the emotion the townspeople were feeling. No, the townspeople felt angry. Some of them said, that boy should be taught a lesson. Others said, I can't believe he called us out in our bare feet and pajamas. No one laughed at the naughty boy's prank, not even the author of this story. The little boy knew the people were angry. How could he miss it? To tell you the truth, he even began to regret his prank. For several weeks, the sheep grazed quietly and the boy kept to himself. But wouldn't you know it, one early morning, a pack of dingoes really did come after the flock. The boy cried out a third time, Dingoes! Wild dingoes! Dingoes are after the sheep! The town stayed silent. No mothers or fathers came running up the hill. No sons or daughters wearing pajamas asked, where are they? Where are the dingoes? No one came to help save the sheep. I'm happy to say that this time the boy did remember the old woman's words of caution. But I'm sad to say that it was much too late. The dingoes began to eat the entire flock. Not all the townspeople ignored the boy's cries. The old woman heard. She knew his cries were not a prank. She ran up the hill. With her help, she and the boy were able to save some of the sheep. The boy and the old woman became companions. She kept him company when the flock was near town. She taught him better ways to spend his time.